during the production of this arc, the original Japanese voice actor of Bulma, Hiromi Tsuru, tragically passed away. The last line she recorded for the show being, "Everyone, good luck. We're counting on you." I think it goes without saying that she will be deeply missed by millions around the world and that her impact on all of our lives cannot be understated. The first episode itself deals with the prelude to the tournament, during which Goku actually has a brief interaction with Jiren, which effectively sets up Goku's goal for the entire tournament: get to Jiren and battle him. In addition to that, we also get Jiren's first sentence. It's short and reveals nothing. Such is the exposure Jiren has received thus far. In addition to this interaction, we get a glimpse of Frieza meeting Frost for the very first time, making a secret alliance, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out later on. And with those brief interactions shown to us, the tournament gets underway, and the chaos ensues. And that's when I notice a really weird decision that's made at the very beginning of the tournament, where almost every character from Universe 7 that lasts the longest are the first to act alone. Now, I can sort of see what they're trying to go for here. The theme of this arc is very clearly that of trust and teamwork, and so starting from a position where they are not working as part of a team makes sense to build a story upon, going from not working as a team to then learning its value. But in doing this, you're throwing literally everyone else who actually does work as part of a team from the get-go under a bus, which sort of flies in the face of the entire theme of this arc. And it's not like most of these guys do well in the tournament as a result of teamwork for very long either. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. As the tournament commences, chaos ensues. Half of Universe 7 remains in a tight huddle strategy, which honestly is smart as the other universes duke it out. As the fighting ensues throughout the tournament, Goku and Vegeta eventually are cornered by the 9th universe before completely blowing them away with a series of attacks throughout the opening minutes of the event, making Universe 9 the first to be eliminated from the Tournament of Power and ultimately erased from existence. This establishes that the rules are 100% serious, and the reality of that situation, everyone's faces still participating as they all take pause. Episodes 99, 100, and 101. These are a fun collection of episodes. The first deals with Krillin primarily, as he, along with Android 18, confront and eliminate Majora from Universe 4. It's a fun little episode climaxing in a feel-good Krillin moment, but quickly takes a negative turn when he is blindsided by Frost and sent to the spectators' bench. Krillin is the first fighter eliminated from Universe 7. After this, Caulifla decides to confront Goku about wanting to learn how to turn Super Saiyan Blue, which Goku says is way too advanced for her and that she should instead focus on the other forms of Super Saiyan. Goku in this moment sort of assumes a mentor-type relationship with Caulifla, and the two end up battling and having a lot of fun when they are going back and forth. This, however, seems to really bother her friend, sister, pupil? Who is Kale to Caulifla? Anyway, she begins going berserk again in this weird green Super Saiyan form, which, to be perfectly honest, is almost on par with the original Broly's motivation, at least when it comes to stakes. I don't like sharing. I don't like crying. I swear, if the Broly movie a couple years ago didn't recreate the Broly character from scratch, my headcanon would be that in order to have the green hair as a Super Saiyan, you have to be really stupid. But anyway, she pretty much goes on a rampage throughout the arena, knocking around various fighters, eventually landing herself in a position where Universe 11's most basic fighters all start ganging up on her, Goku, and Caulifla, forming a temporary alliance between the three. Eventually it becomes the case that Kale and Caulifla are cornered and need then to rely on each other's power, leading to Kale actually learning how to control the power temporarily. Together, the two young Saiyans combine their attacks in a blast that I swear looks like an ice cream I had when I was a kid, and in doing so eliminating a bunch of fighters from the 11th universe. The episode itself ends proper with Goku giving the two girls time to recharge and regain their stamina after their clash with Universe 11. Episodes 102, 103, and 104. Okay, so no time to waste because Brienne, literally everyone's favorite character, makes her grand entrance and is flanked by two other magical girl parodies. Together in this episode, they pretty much end up trying to transform like a whole mess of times, and don't get me wrong, it's a cool transformation sequence, but jeez does this go on and on for the sake of a joke and saving time on animation. Brienne eventually does get to transform into her ultimate state, Ribrienne, your favorite character and mine, and as I've said, she is sort of a parody on the magical girl genre, which I actually like, and her design is hilarious too. But that charm is gone soon after with the frequency with which she makes the same gags over and over and over. Although that's less of a problem with her and more of a common trait in Dragon Ball in general. However, the episode itself continues as Ribrienne goes on a rampage around the arena, grossing out Vegeta and knocking out a bunch of no-names. 17, meanwhile, is having a great fight with one of the other magical girl fighters called Kakunsa. The episode itself has some really imaginative fight sequences and some great artwork, ending in 17 eliminating both her and Vikal from Universe 2. Later we see Gohan eliminating China's president, leading to both he and Piccolo fighting the last two members of Universe 10, ultimately winning that exchange and sealing the fates of that universe. Gohan looks at the last fighter's locket with a picture of his family. As the fighters and deities vanish before their eyes, Gohan mourns as the 10th universe is eliminated and erased from existence. The stakes are indeed high. With Universe 10 now done for, we then switch gears to another battle that is getting underway between Hit and Universe 11's Dispo. He's joined by his Universe 11 teammate Kunshi, leading Goku to offer Hit some backup. Utilizing his Super Saiyan God form for the first time since Season 1 to match Dispo's speed, together they eliminate Kunshi, but Dispo does manage to retreat. It's actually a fun little episode, and it's always refreshing to see something like Super Saiyan God, which up until this point had been criminally underused. Episode 105, 106, and 107. Okay, so these episodes are really a mixed bag. One is good, one is really bad, and another is actually really good. So we're batting 2 for 3 here. Episode 105 pretty much focuses on and covers Master Roshi's fight with a duck, and it's actually really touching. More specifically, this episode deals with Master Roshi's thoughts on his life, his philosophy, and what he'll be leaving behind if he does go here and now. While charging what seems to be one last Kamehameha from the originator of the technique, we receive dialogue that effectively captures my love for an entire era of Dragon Ball in just a few short lines. And it was most definitely enough to squeeze a few tears from me too. After this, Roshi falls lifelessly to the floor, spurring Goku on to completely forget about the fight he's having and engaging in right now to rush to his side. Goku somehow miraculously brings Roshi back to life through some unknown power, and once the old guy starts to stir, Goku quickly reverts back to being his innocent self the same way he was in early Dragon Ball. It's a tender moment that honestly, it worked really effectively for me. The next episode, however, is one that primarily deals with a sniper and Tenshinhan who barely manages to eliminate a single person. That episode. It's really not my thing. Personally, it really lacked any sense of suspense and honestly felt out of place amidst the rest of this tournament. So, moving on. Episode 107 has some really strong storyboarding. When I first saw Frost receiving instruction from Shanta at his palace on what his plan of action should be, for it to subtly fade into the tournament arena in a flash of lightning, I knew I was in for a treat here. It was seamless and brilliant. Also within this episode, this weird blue water fighter Majikayo causes Dispo trouble until Jiren finally does something and eliminates the potentially dangerous fighter with little effort, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, Frost begins fighting Master Roshi, who is struggling against him because of course he is. But get this, Frost is suddenly put on the back foot by Roshi, which is, at least to me, hilariously unrealistic, but at least it's not for long, and without prior warning, Roshi bursts out the Mothaba technique on Frost. I keep getting surprised by that thing. However, Roshi is very much at his limit and doesn't possess enough strength to execute the move flawlessly, resulting in Frost's escape. Completely taken aback by this, the Universe 6 fighter quickly formulates a cunning plan that involves getting the attention of Vegeta, firing an attack towards the Saiyan, who blocks it with ease. Investigating the situation, Vegeta rushes in only to be suddenly attacked by an old rival, Vegeta, who's defending Frost. Now armed with earplugs, Vegeta now has no obvious weakness. In an effort to help Vegeta, Master Roshi uses the Mothaba once again, but this time Frost redirects it and uses it on Vegeta instead. All this time, he was waiting for this opportunity. Sealing Vegeta away in a vial, Frost seems to have gotten his revenge on the Saiyan Prince. Turning his attention once again back to Roshi, Frost releases a barrage of blasts, during which Roshi manages to throw a tiny, undetectable blast that meets its mark, breaking the vial, unleashing Vegeta and his wrath exploding forth from the prison in a blue flash of light. After this, Frost, just smoke bombs away like a 60s cartoon villain, and Vegeta knocks Vegeta out of the ring, much like he did the last time. Vegeta respects Roshi after this, but advises him to take stock of the situation and to eliminate himself now before something terrible happens. Episode 108, 109, and 110. The special. In episode 108, the alliance Frieza made with Frost at the tournament's beginning rears its ugly head. Gohan is seen struggling with the Yardrat from the second universe when Frieza comes in and takes control of the situation easily as Gohan's backup. But then, Frost joins the fray, changing the dynamic entirely. Frieza and he seem to have come to some sort of understanding, which ultimately leads to Frieza needing to fight Gohan to prove his loyalty to Frost. Frieza plays along and transforms, getting what seems to be the upper hand on Gohan, in essence betraying his own universe. Eventually knocking Gohan to the side, with a brief break from the action, Frieza talks to Frost, unloading advice onto him, as if he were his mentor figure. The final piece of advice that he unloads onto him, though? Not to trust anyone, knocking him out of the ring, much to Frost's surprise. He had been pulling his punches this entire time with Gohan, who had also been in on this charade. But who cares about that, because now we've got the real meat and potatoes. And I'm not saying that because I'm from Ireland, I'm saying that because this is when the action gets turned up to 11. You see, episodes 109 and 110 are the installments that made up the hour-long TV special that aired together when broadcast in Japan. It covers the end of Goku's battle with Ribrianne, which is really well animated, and the first fight Goku has with Jiren. Throughout the series, Jiren has barely been seen to move, but this is where Goku forces Jiren to move, like literally. The dude won't move unless Goku makes him. It's a really fun scene that escalates very quickly from the get-go, and there's tension because we want to know how Goku matches up to this wall that Jiren poses. Cycling through his base form, Super Saiyan 1 and 2, Super Saiyan God, which actually punches his head a smidge, Super Saiyan Blue, and even Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 20 without any success. Unless you consider making him move a success, in which case got him? Their fight in this Kaioken variation of the Super Saiyan Blue form is my favorite in this exchange. Goku being flung to the arena floor only to explode back into Jiren's face, it's pretty great to see. There's also a gorgeous tracking shot of the two as they fight around the arena, passing all the other fighters, giving a great sense of scale to the actual occasion. Things, however, become dire as Goku exhausts pretty much every technique and option at his disposal. Well, all except one. The Spirit Bomb, which happens to have my favorite accompanying track of the entire series. And that's only the first half. Yeah, you heard me right, this is only the first half. And that first half ends as Jiren forces the Spirit Bomb back onto Goku, who seemingly gets destroyed in the explosion. It's honestly a crazy sight to behold. As the second half begins, everyone is left in awe after what's transpired, when suddenly... Goku erupts from the floor, presenting to us the best transformation sequence in this series. Not Super Saiyan God or Blooper Saiyan, Ultra Instinct has been hinted at since episode 5 when Goku's body acted without him against Beerus. This is what I call a transformation that has been built upon and given the correct occasion. And man, is the fight that follows impressive. We see Goku dodge Jiren's attacks with little difficulty, and the action supplied by Toei's finest is spectacular. In this one special, we get Ryo Onoshi, Yuya Takahashi, Naoki Tate, and even some Notoshi Shida covering the end of the fight as Goku charges with one final attack towards Jiren before unfortunately running out of juice at the last moment before being cast aside with ease by the monstrous Universe 11 warrior. The ending of the episode also is a brilliant callback role reversal with Frieza offering up his energy to Goku, very reminiscent of what Goku did for him on Namek. We interrupt this tournament for totally not fun. Decided to make some t-shirts. I made the design to celebrate the completion of Dragon Ball Super, and I produced it in a fully colored classic manga style. From the line art all the way through to the fully colored and rendered image, this might be my favorite illustration I've ever done. So I hope you guys like it. And if you don't feel like a t-shirt right now, we got a whole bunch of other stuff including posters, hoodies, and mugs, all with this design. These will only be available for a limited time, so if you want to get your T&M designed apparel, click the link in the description down below. Now, back to the tournament. Episode 111, 112, and 113. So this episode pretty much covers the aftermath of Goku's fight with Jiren. Goku himself is entirely spent and needs to recuperate his energy levels again with a nice rest. While this is all transpiring, Hit directs his attention towards Jiren as the two begin battling. In doing so, Hit breaks out a ton of interesting unpredictable moves against Jiren, but none of them seem to work or have that much of an effect at all. Though I must say, it is fun to watch the two of them discover the depths of each other's abilities firsthand. It's also nice to get longer stretches where we are exposed to Jiren more. Eventually, Hit manages to restrain Jiren in another dimension or something with this new technique he's been developing, but even that isn't enough, and with a dominating attack, Jiren eliminates Hit. In just 2 episodes, Jiren has destroyed 2 of the strongest contestants of the tournament, and yet, we still know very little about Jiren's personality. Next up is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, a setup episode. Piccolo and Gohan start fighting the Universe 6 Namekians, Kaba becomes Super Saiyan 2 after being saved and given a pep talk by Vegeta, a drained Goku has trouble with some robots, but Caulifla and Kale remove them from the equation. Essentially, this episode is all about Universe 6 and Universe 7's relationship. Oh, and Frieza eliminates Kaba too. And to be perfectly honest, I'm very disappointed with what little they did with Kaba's character. Moving on, episode 113 is pretty much all about the fight between Goku and the remaining Universe 6 Saiyans, really. Since Hit was their leader and has since been eliminated, Caulifla wants to learn how to turn Super Saiyan 3 to take charge of her situation for her universe, and so Goku begins fighting her. I actually really enjoyed this interaction. Since Goku is redlining when it comes to energy levels, he's forced to rely on his martial arts knowledge while in his base form as he regains his stamina. Slowly, he works his way back up through the Super Saiyan forms as Kale rejoins the party, and as soon as their teamwork starts to get the better of Goku, he bursts into Super Saiyan 3, easily overpowering them before reverting back to Super Saiyan 2. He still doesn't have enough stamina to show them everything he's capable of just yet. Kale, on the other hand, who now seems to be in control of her green-haired Super Saiyan form, tries to push herself farther into the depths of her power. However, in doing so, she loses herself once again, ending the episode. Oh, and by the way, ever since Hit was eliminated, Jiren's been sleeping. Oh, I mean, meditating. Episode 114, 115, and 116. Taking up right from where the previous left off, Kale is about to go berserk once again, but Caulifla once again brings her back from the brink, and together they take on Goku, now armed with even more firepower. The fight is honestly really pretty in places, with gorgeous artwork from Yuya Takahashi, and even some comedic moments with Frieza and the Power Ranger guy animated by Yuichi Karasawa, one of the principal animators from episode 50 that I also loved so much. As the action begins to ramp up, Goku is able to use his God form to great effect against the two young Saiyans, eventually cornering them and forcing their hand to use their trump card, Fusion. Enter... Her design is honestly my favorite of these new Saiyans introduced in the modern generation of Dragon Ball, and as the fight progresses, it becomes obvious that Goku won't stand a chance against her if he remains in his God form. And so, to remain competitive, he uses Super Saiyan Blue, leading Kefla to respond in kind by turning Super Saiyan herself. Things are tight and a little tough for Goku in places, but clever uses of the Kaioken technique keep him from losing too many of the exchanges. But that can only last so long. Goku is still feeling the effects of the prior battles and eventually is sent flying to the ground with two well-placed kicks from Kefla, leading to, once again, a surge of dormant energy brewing from deep within Goku. Ultra Instinct has joined the chat. Let's hope this time it sticks around long enough to make a difference. The re-reveal of Ultra Instinct is once again getting fantastic treatment in the series, built up to and demonstrated using appropriate framing and on-model artwork. And honestly, what follows is some of the most fun fight sequences sporting solid animation and choreography, facilitating the single best finish to any Dragon Ball fight I have ever seen, ever. 112 and 113. So this episode pretty much covers the aftermath of Goku's fight with Jiren. Goku himself is entirely spent and needs to recuperate his energy levels again with a nice rest. While this is all transpiring, Hit directs his attention towards Jiren as the two begin battling. In doing so, Hit breaks out a ton of interesting, unpredictable moves against Jiren, but none of them seem to work or have that much of an effect at all. Though I must say, it is fun to watch the two of them discover the depths of each other's abilities firsthand. It's also nice to get longer stretches where we are exposed to Jiren more. Eventually, Hit manages to restrain Jiren in another dimension or something with this new technique he's been developing, but even that isn't enough, and with a dominating attack, Jiren eliminates Hit. In just 2 episodes, Jiren has destroyed 2 of the strongest contestants of the tournament. And yet, we still know very little about Jiren's personality. Next up is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, a setup episode. Piccolo and Gohan start fighting the Universe 6 Namekians, Kaba becomes Super Saiyan 2 after being saved and given a pep talk by Vegeta, a drained Goku has trouble with some robots, but Caulifla and Kale remove them from the equation. Essentially, this episode is all about Universe 6 and Universe 7's relationship. Oh, and Frieza eliminates Kaba too. And to be perfectly honest, I'm very disappointed with what little they did with Kaba's character. Moving on, episode 113 is pretty much all about the fight between Goku and the remaining Universe 6 Saiyans, really. Since Hit was their leader and has since been eliminated, Caulifla wants to learn how to turn Super Saiyan 3 to take charge of her situation for her universe, and so Goku begins fighting her. I actually really enjoyed this interaction. Since Goku is redlining when it comes to energy levels, he's forced to rely on his martial arts knowledge while in his base form as he regains his stamina. Slowly, he works his way back up through the Super Saiyan forms as Kale rejoins the party, and as soon as their teamwork starts to get the better of Goku, he bursts into Super Saiyan 3, easily overpowering them before reverting back to Super Saiyan 2. He still doesn't have enough stamina to show them everything he's capable of just yet. Kale, on the other hand, who now seems to be in control of her green-haired Super Saiyan form, tries to push herself farther into the depths of her power. However, in doing so, she loses herself once again, ending the episode. Oh, and by the way, ever since Hit was eliminated, Jiren's been sleeping. Oh, I mean, meditating. Episode 114, 115, and 116. Taking off right from where the previous left off, Kaylin's about to go berserk once again, but Cauliflower once again brings her back from the brink, and together they take on Goku, now armed with even more firepower. The fight is honestly really pretty in places, with gorgeous artwork from Yuya Takahashi, and even some comedic moments with Frieza and the Power Ranger guy animated by Yuichi Karasawa, one of the principal animators from episode 50 that I also loved so much. As the action begins to ramp up, Goku is able to use his God form to great effect against the two young Saiyans, eventually cornering them and forcing their hand to use their trump card, Fusion. Enter... Her design is honestly my favorite of these new Saiyans introduced in the modern generation of Dragon Ball, and as the fight progresses, it becomes obvious that Goku won't stand a chance against her if he remains in his God form. And so, to remain competitive, he uses Super Saiyan Blue, leading Kefla to respond in kind by turning Super Saiyan herself. Things are tight and a little tough for Goku in places, but clever uses of the Kaioken technique keep him from losing too many of the exchanges. But that can only last so long. Goku is still feeling the effects of the prior battles and eventually is sent flying to the ground with two well-placed kicks from Kefla, leading to, once again, a surge of dormant energy brewing from deep within Goku. Ultra Instinct has joined the chat. Let's hope this time it sticks around long enough to make a difference. The re-reveal of Ultra Instinct is once again getting fantastic treatment in the series, built up to and demonstrated using appropriate framing and on-model artwork. And honestly, what follows is some of the most fun fight sequences sporting solid animation and choreography, facilitating the single best finish to any Dragon Ball fight I have ever seen, ever, in my life. I mean it. I cannot begin to describe how much I love that Kamehameha grind that would make Tony Hawk proud, performed by Goku when he was seemingly out of options to dodge against Kefla's ice cream attack. I quite literally didn't expect it in the slightest. And after that devastating attack from Goku, Cauliflower and Kale are eliminated, leaving just two warriors remaining from their universe in the tournament, and oh, Jiren is awake again. Neat. Episodes 117, 118, and 119. The next episode covers Ribrianne's battle with Android 18 and eventually 17 as they both work together to eliminate her after assuming a massive new form. The action is honestly spectacular with cool pieces of animation supplied by Ryo Onoshi. The following episode, however, covers the remaining two fights from Universe 6. Two Namekians have taken the absorption ability explained during the Namek Saga to never before seen heights. The two of them now represent their entire Namekian. It's a really cool and great idea that lends a lot of credibility to these two utilizing a ritual established ages and ages ago in the story. All the while this is happening, the androids give Goku some assistance against the last three fighters from Universe 2, as he is once again completely drained after his tango with the Ultra Instinct form. However, what follows in this episode is easily my favorite Gohan fight in the entire series of Dragon Ball Super. It demonstrates his calm demeanor extremely well as he, despite Piccolo losing his cool, finds the resolve to not only pick up Piccolo's slack, but also formulate a plan of counterattack. He tells Piccolo that while he takes on the two Universe 6 Namekians, he should charge his Makanko Sapo or Special Beam Cannon depending on your persuasion. Gohan seems to have bought him enough time, but even that charge isn't enough to pierce the hide of these Universe 6 warriors, resulting in a counterattack leading to Piccolo's fainting. It's at this point we are greeted with my personal visual highlight of the episode. Standing on either side of Piccolo in a void of darkness is the spirit of Kami and Neo. The Kami spirit points in front of Piccolo, leading him to come to his senses as he notices Gohan taking an attack the same way he did for Gohan when he was a child during the Saiyan saga. Gohan, still the backbone of the assault, presses the attack on the two Universe 6 fighters, giving Piccolo ample time to charge his Makanko Sapo. As one warrior gets dangerously close to attacking Gohan, the young Saiyan refuses to flinch, having limitless trust in his mentor. Piccolo makes the save this time, and together they eliminate the last of Universe 6 at the exact same time Goku and the android eliminate Universe 2. Two entire universes have been eliminated in this episode, and what an episode it was. The parallels between this and the collection of moments during the Saiyan saga are not a coincidence. The once terrified child unable to stick to a plan, always dependent on others to protect him, has become a confident, intelligent, and tenacious warrior with boundless trust in his allies. I loved this episode, and to cap it all off, There's a very bittersweet ending as Beerus sees his brother vanish before his eyes. Unfortunately, what follows this stellar show is something of a gimmick episode, following the remaining fighters from Universe 7 struggling to find and eliminate two hard-to-see adversaries. And while they do eliminate them both eventually, Piccolo is also eliminated rather unceremoniously. Episodes 120, 121, and 122. The episode kicks off with Gohan wanting to give his father and Vegeta a break from fighting and to take on the robots from Universe 3 alone. As things get a little more hairy, the androids join in and eventually Goku and Vegeta do too. It's nice getting to see Gohan act with some sort of agency instead of him reacting to situations that befall him. That is a change to Gohan in this arc that is most notable to me, and one that I don't see brought up in conversation nearly enough. The next episode begins and all the robots join to create an organic-looking creature called Anilaza. Hey look, I don't make up the rules, I just review them. But is Anilaza classed as a fourth separate fighter, or is it just one big new one? And if that's the case, then doesn't it count as the 11th member of their... I don't know. Anyways, Android 18 is saved by Goku and eventually sacrifices herself for her brother so that he can remain in the tournament. 18 is therefore eliminated, which means that Universe 7 is now down to 5 fighters. I want to also make a note that all this time Jiren has stood and said almost nothing. There's even been scenes where his teammates ask him questions and he still says nothing. His meme-level commitment to this silent tough guy routine is hilarious. He meditated in 6 episodes, and since waking up, he has literally stood silently, not fighting, mind you, not doing anything for 7 episodes. Thankfully, though, episode 122 puts an end to that trend for Jiren, as well as doing a fantastic job in setting up the scene at the very beginning. With only 2 universes remaining, it's almost framed like a western showing the gloves, hair, and ears of various characters, showing the coolness and calmness before the storm of conflict to come is strikingly effective. Universe 11 and Universe 7 are all that remain. Universe 11 is Jiren, Disco, and Tombo, and Universe 7 Frieza, Iron 17, Gohan, and Vegeta remain. And while the focus is on everyone at the beginning, it most certainly is the Vegeta episode. And Yuki Takahashi animates too, so that's always great. Kicking things off at the battle between Goku and Jiren, competing towards a battle that involves Vegeta, demonstrating how he differs as a fighter to Goku. While this is going on, we see Frieza versus Disco, as well as Tombo versus Gohan at 17. Vegeta begins scuffling at Jiren, throwing blow after blow, landing some and even getting the trash talk a bit. In response, however, Jiren bulldozes through a Galagon and always knocks Vegeta out of bounds. However, always defiant, he once again stands before the Titan of Universe 11 after one last massive attack to test a Super Saiyan Blue full power Final Flash. And it is awesome. Continuing in his determination to beat Vegeta did not chase Goku any longer, but to blaze his own path to power and to find his own way of surpassing him. And while that is nice, and while that is a beautiful sentiment, it doesn't work out, leading to Vegeta getting trapped in a vortex explosion ball or something by Jiren. The point is, Vegeta is down for the count. Episodes 123, 124, and 125. The battle continues as Goku fights Jiren again in blue, but this time tries to implement strategy, either by setting landmine-type energy attacks or by slicing off the arena beneath them using the same attack used against them in the earlier arc. Great callback. Coupled with the instant transmission, I love it. If Jiren is done well, I guess physics be damned. But, okay, I don't understand. If time doesn't work, then why did this? When this ended just isolated into the island, there have been countless moments during this tournament where combatants might as well have been flying. He shouldn't survive this. Anyways, the episode ends with Vegeta rejoining the fight, pushing himself to newer, bluer heights. I present Blooper Saiyan God, Blooper Saiyan... Blue. Honestly, the compositing around this new Vegeta form is too much for me. There are so many light effects, sparkles, and CGI fluff added in post-production, I can honestly barely make out what's happening in terms of fight choreography. Frieza, meanwhile, tries to make a deal with Dispo to play for his team if they resurrect him with the Super Dragon Balls. Dispo, somewhat intelligently, refuses and Frieza transforms into his golden state. Watching Frieza act as he would have during the Namek saga is honestly fantastic and super interesting. He never does more than he needs to and thinks about every single move he makes. And he's always ready with a terrifying one-liner here and there too. That is, while he's in control. And Dispo, it seems he can turn the jets up even more. power as we see him pushing Frieza to the edge of the arena. About to be eliminated, Gohan makes the save, leading to a short but poignant and great interaction between the two of them. Gohan is serious, and me likey. The two fight and struggle against Dispo, leading to Gohan needing to sacrifice himself for Dispo's elimination. Both are knocked out as a result. Now only Toppo and Jiren remain for the 11th universe, and for the 7th, Goku, Frieza, Vegeta, and 17 remain. And what follows this episode is probably one of the strongest episodes in the tournament, I think, in terms of character. And it's very fun. So, Justice Lag McEggman is fighting 17, who's finding some success with his inexhaustible energy reserves, proving to be much more of a problem to Toppo than he first anticipated. However, he does find his opening and launches a massive attack towards 17, but at the last moment, right before 17 was about to be overwhelmed, Frieza finds himself in the right place at the right time. Unable to defend himself while holding back 17's blast, Frieza begins trash-talking Toppo, taunting him, and firing blast after blast at the Pride Trooper, and this is exactly what Frieza would do. He's very much a cat playing with his food right now. But alas, the play must end, and end it most certainly does, sandwiching Toppo between both his and 17's attacks. However, unluckily for Frieza, moments before he was to knock Toppo off the stage, the downed warrior stands to his feet once again and assumes the power of a god of destruction. So, that's less than ideal for Frieza in this instance, but it does contain a nice callback to the moment when Frieza controlled the Destroyer energy, but this time, it doesn't work out. Though, I'm not sure what stopped it from completely destroying Frieza. Oh well. The fight with Toppo, now a god of destruction, fighting 17 resumes, leading to a similar instance where 17 is on the verge of defeat when... Standing atop a rocky outcrop reminiscent of his surprise return on Namek, Frieza defiantly blusters at Toppo, leading to the near elimination of the fourth last member of Universe 7. Frieza is now out cold, inches from elimination. There's some terrific expressions in this episode, some wonderful animation to boot, and I thoroughly enjoyed it all. Episodes 126, 127, and 128. The fight continues as Toppo gets 17 into a position of elimination for the third time when Frieza stops it again. MVP of the tournament, don't at me. I swear, Toppo must think this guy's a cockroach or something because he is not going away at all. Meanwhile, the fighting between Jiren, Goku, and Vegeta gets too close to the action of Frieza and 17, causing Toppo to start fighting Vegeta in Jiren's place. In short, they fight, Vegeta gets beaten down, and is forced to recall his past to get a surge of inspiration to from Toppo, leading to a recreation of Vegeta's sacrifice in the Buu arc. I do not like this at all, and I'll explain why next week. So, Vegeta crawls out of the crater he sacrificed himself in with a few scratches and less clothes. Cool. So, Vegeta, 17, and Goku all team up against Jiren, who brushes them all off without much difficulty at all. Throughout this entire tournament, Jiren has said nothing of substance, done extremely little, and even spent a large portion of the tournament sleeping and watching others fight. He's been this emotionless Terminator-type character that literally acts not as a character, but as a plot device, an obstacle to the heroes of Universe 7 to overcome. But here we are, 5 episodes from the finish line, and we get, and I'm not kidding here, a tragic, cliché backstory for Jiren. When I first saw this, I burst out crying with laughter. Anyway, 17 calling out Jiren's nerves to such an extent that he ends up sacrificing himself to give Goku and Vegeta the best chance to recover. He won't sacrifice themselves in this show. Goku still remains the floor, but Vegeta stands defiant, albeit with zero energy left. Episode 128 is pretty much one Vegeta with a little bit of Goku at the end. Vegeta is being called by Jiren over and over and over again. This was storyboarded and heavily corrupted by the series character designer I mentioned before. I mentioned during the Battle of Dodge that he worked on the arc in episode 13 as well. Yeah, works similar to that episode, very on model, albeit on the safe side when it comes to clothing. Dragon Ball characters should do enough to hold their shoulders, don't they? Regardless, Vegeta keeps getting up again and again to face Jiren, with the final time he does coming from his catching on a piece of random debris while he's unconscious. And that's the second time it means that a random piece of debris has saved him in the series. Despite getting up one last time, Vegeta ends up falling off the stage, leaving Goku alone with Jiren, but not before giving him all of his remaining energy. Goku tries to make this as much of a concept as he can, using the last of his and Vegeta's energy, but alas, it's still not even remotely enough to test or push Jiren, leading to once again a beaten Goku on the brink of losing the entire tournament. But something starts to happen. Ultra Instinct kicks in one more time, leading to the first major or significant significant strike Jiren has taken. With that face that he gets to go by, then we are most certainly in for a treat. Episodes 129, 130, and 131. These final 3 chapters are the holy trinity of Dragon Ball Super, providing payoff to every substantial thing they did in this arc as a show, with each episode, in my opinion, better than the last. So, how did they go? Goku and Jiren continue fighting. Yeah, because you care to blind your man, and Goku ends up taking a massive blow from Jiren. Through Goku's last 2 times use the form has already studied and understood his movement well enough to successfully land a shot on this unhittable new form of Goku. The Shigeki's Goku pep talk to the sidelines, ordering Goku to, and I quote, "Get into the realms of the gods and defeat Jiren Kakarot." Hearing this, Goku rallies himself yet again. Explosions envelop the arena as Yuichi Karasawa, another wonderful action animator, provides some great artwork and animation for the fight to help it feel as big as it deserves to be. However, this desperate flurry doesn't last long, and as fast as it started, Jiren has Goku once again pressed down to the ground. And this is when Whis starts to notice something. An energy building, a sense of stability and offense bubbling within Goku. All this time, Goku's Ultra Instinct form had been unrefined, an unstable, mainly defensive form. However, for someone to truly perfect Ultra Instinct, to master it, they must also be able to attack without thinking simultaneously. Taking one last deep breath, accepting the power surging within him, Goku lets out a massive roar as what looks like a galaxy of light surrounds and flows through him. Jiren acknowledges and smiles. Meeting Goku's power output from atop the high ground, respect is now something Jiren has for Goku. Taking aim, Jiren fires the largest attack the tournament has yet seen towards the Saiyan, that while currently surging with power, is still on a flimsy foothold inches from defeat. The attack is fired, the sound effects blast accompanied by the roaring soundtrack when... quiet. Appearing behind Jiren, holding in his hand the blast Jiren sent to him, stands Goku, shrouded in a phantom white glow, similar to how he appeared behind him last. This time, he lands consecutive blows while dodging at the exact same time. He has mastered offense as well as defense. This is mastered offense. And what follows this unveiling is the single biggest fight in Dragon Ball Super. Without exaggeration, this is the most well-animated episode of Dragon Ball, and that includes Dragon Ball Z, being the treasure gem it is online and all. It's honestly wonderful to see a show that started off as well as it did right up to the best demonstration of animation in the Dragon Ball episodic series as a whole. With that said, there isn't much happening here in terms of writing or story, but there is a nice moment where Goku straight up says that he is the hero of justice, but takes the hero of some little time and family. Outside of that, it's just spectacular fight choreography with every major action effects animator working on it in some capacity. Anything on the Silphire with Goku's body rejecting mastered Ultra Instincts to the point of almost ending it very well. Goku is done. And as well as I didn't see coming, it's a play, but also 17. What? The final episode is, in my opinion, the best episode of the series, by without question. Supplying the most meaningful action of the show, providing the best story inclusions, and delivering some of my absolute favorite lines of not just this series, but the entire series. So, let's check it out. This final episode can be broken up into its prelude or pre-climax, the climax itself, and finally the conclusion. But what helps link some of these parts that I find most interesting throughout this arc itself is following the 3-act structure, and by all means, we are well within the 3rd act, but this particular episode appears to its own self-contained 3-act structure to perhaps more effectively and closely than any other episode in this arc thus far, acting not only as the series and arc climaxes, but also the climax to this episode's singular journey, creating a moment all the more intense and fully forced. One of the most interesting aspects of this final episode here is that Goku really isn't the main character. He's technically a major player, but actually acts more of a Chekhov's gun than the focus character in this episode. In reality, in this episode, characters like Frieza and even Jiren are the focus and main characters of the finish. So when they're on their own hero's journey, accepting the call to action to transform themselves, atoning for what they have done, and coming out the other end. Different. Jiren is that he receives a new outlook on life, and Frieza is that he gets a but I don't want to get lost in the weeds of the hero's journey, and this is a video first and foremost about me reviewing the series. I'm still a really big fan of this finish, and I need you guys to know first off that there's much more going on in this episode than maybe you might have realized. The episode itself begins with a can be eliminated. Despite this, he quickly accepts the call to action and fights them. Frieza takes the lead against the purple fruit, but what's interesting is that the entire episode centers around the main theme of the arc, and that is trust. From the very first opening line of the episode, the exact theme is mentioned, trust, by both Frieza and Jiren in their perfect game, and that is most definitely not a coincidence. Despite this, both he and Frieza reject the notion of trust and so begin a battle relying on their own strength to get the job done. Frieza begins taunting Jiren about how he isn't the invincible fighter he thought he once was, and that he isn't intimidated by it in the slightest. This position Frieza's character finds himself in is so interesting, including with the idea of fighting the food, always finding a reason to think about himself. Very much in this scenario, he is playing the role of an anti-hero the same way Vegeta was while fighting the fourth time now. As Frieza's Jiren was fighting his passion through the floor, we got an awesome establishing shot that really demonstrates the scale of the battle at hand, offering us perspective of where Android 17 is right now relative to them, which becomes important later. Frieza is using every single weapon he has against Jiren, including his tail, in extreme compelling. The scene even manages to pull off a swerve too in its short time with us. Jiren rises to the taunt of Frieza stepping on his tail, beginning to pummel his body like a punching bag. Looking for this reaction, however, Frieza uses telekinesis to cross Jiren's feet before giving way to 17's attack, having successfully flanked into the correct position, taking both Frieza and Jiren off guard. The android surrounds himself and Jiren with a strong barrier before creating a massive explosion around the final fighter from the 11th universe. As the smoke clears, Jiren falls to his knees, down for the count. Frieza walks up to 17. 17 went all out to stop here. After which 17 responds by saying, even if I fail, I need to be fine. 17 has known with all of his trust in Frieza, and hearing this, all Frieza can do is stop at the idea and sarcastically quit before moving on to finish Jiren off. Frieza at this point, much like Jiren still is, has no trust in his name. Across one way, he's the hand of the and now even Frieza. Because he has been cutting through the silence, Papa shouts out to his fallen comrade as he achieves that phrase of darkness. Jiren replies, I had no words. Toppo continues to criticize Jiren's old way of doing things, training for his pride while trusting no one. Toppo rejects all of this and in the face of certain destruction puts all of his and Universe 11's trust still in Jiren's resolve. With this, Jiren finally begins to understand what trust is in himself and in others, finding the mental resolve to pick himself up, exploding with new reserves of energy. This forces Frieza back. Once standing alone like he is most comfortable doing, he is forced to stand behind the shield of an ally that moments ago put his trust in him. And there's tons of symbolism here. Frieza, by necessity, needed for his own survival's sake to stand behind 17's defenses, but also needed to strip himself of his gaudy golden facade to help the shield's integrity, meaning the shield only works if Frieza trusts 17 with his energy. Kicking and screaming at 17 to not tell him what to do, it's obvious that he is still trying to reject the notion of relying completely on others. This loss of his golden form also communicates tension to us, the audience, for reasons that are abundantly obvious. They are about to run out of energy, the shield is buckling and cracking, it's about to give way. When...
すまなかったな、サイクも。任せっぱなしになっちまってよ。
This moment, this freaking moment, on a fundamental, narrative, visual, and even musical level works, and I don't use this word often, perfectly. And what follows is my favorite scene in this episode, in this series, and maybe even Dragon Ball. Goku, by some miracle, stands alongside his teammates one last time, formulating a plan of action. 17 is to take care of backup while he and Frieza deal with Jiren. Frieza clearly still doesn't feel comfortable with this, teasing Goku, are you sure you don't want to stay back too? Goku sees has immediate, shouting his name, reprimanding his foolish thought process at such a dire point in the contest, confronting Frieza for the first time about this side of himself, forcing him to see reason. Goku, in this moment, is showing the true strength of his character, and it's been like this since the very beginning of Dragon Ball, the flat art character that shows the truth to those trapped in the lie. He says, we have all gone well beyond our limits already. If we don't work together and fight, Universe 7 is going to be erased. Goku then turns his focus to Jiren, a changed fighter partially thanks to him, but also his teammates. Goku begins to marvel at the level of strength this fighter has been able to muster, and that's when the most important piece of dialogue cuts through the air. Without being provoked, Frieza says, you haven't forgotten about your promise to resurrect me, have you? Goku responds somewhat confused. Frieza? I'm asking if you still remember! He screams at Goku. So long as you don't break your promise, I'll keep mine. You know that better than anyone, don't you? That line was not something Frieza was expecting, but in that one solitary line, it suddenly gives Frieza pause for thought, recontextualizing everything he understood about what transpired on Namek. Frieza never trusted anyone. Not his forces, his father, and most certainly not Goku after he begged him to spare his life and to give him energy. What made that scene on Namek as powerful as it wasn't simply the spectacle of the event, but also the story about how Frieza defeated himself. Then and there, while begging on that planet, not for a second did Frieza ever consider trusting anyone. That at the first opportunity he's given, he would destroy Goku there and then. And we all know how that played out. Now faced with that explanation in the closing moments of the tournament, Frieza is forced to swallow his pride, accept that Goku in this instance might be onto something, and regardless of whether or not he agrees with him, at this moment, he has to trust him. He's not going to make the same mistake he did on Namek. This is the best dialogue exchange in all of Super, no question. And for the first time in the history of the show, both Frieza and Goku fight unconditionally side by side as a team for the sake of their home. And it is amazing, showcasing a phenomenal storyboard by the genius Megumi Ishitani, who, if I'm being honest, deserves an entire video of her own. And in addition to that, the bombastic animation supplied by the incomparable Yuya Takahashi really puts the cherry on top of this battle. And what a battle! Showcasing teamwork maneuvers by both Goku and Frieza, coming in with a flying knee to Jiren's face, making the save for Goku at the beginning, getting a boost from Goku later off the wall, and then Goku returning the favor to Frieza, making the save as the guitar solo slashes through the action, with him fading in and out of his Super Saiyan form, which, if I'm being completely honest, is a damn cool visual. And what caps off the end of the tournament? Jiren saying this. So this is trust. Universe 7's power. Jiren acknowledges that trust is a powerful trait to have and not a weakness. This episode, man, I adore it. The rest of the episode is tidy up on the details of the aftermath of the tournament. 17 uses the balls to revive the fallen universes, and Frieza loses his halo and gains a life once again. Oh, also, a really fun visual Easter egg actually happens right after Frieza gets his life back. Frieza teases Whis, "Are you sure about this? I don't intend to stop my evil ways." We then cut to Goku surrounded by Gohan, Piccolo, Krillin, Vegeta, basically everyone who was around on Namek. That's a really nice touch. The gang then goes home. Both Goku and Vegeta tease us about the future while assuming their classic poses from their Gorge battle. And that's Dragon Ball Super's Tournament of Power. It's surprisingly easy and enjoyable to watch as a binging experience. I will, however, say that I recall people complaining about the pacing when it was on the air week to week, which is a justifiable criticism too, I believe. There are some very slow and uneventful episodes and spots in the arc, and if you're not interested in the character that gets the screen time that particular week, then you're out of luck and gotta wait until next week to roll the dice again. I mean, there's a reason why I grouped these by the 3 instead of reviewing them individually. But in saying that, I love tournament arcs, and I love them as much as I do, not because of the action that comes with them, but because they act as a wonderful way to bring characters and subsequently their emotional journeys into conflict with each other, leading to those emotional journeys in a lot of ways finding their resolutions. And I think for the most part the Universe Survival arc did that and was for me the strongest outing the entire series had by a long shot. Perhaps my biggest issue with the arc can be seen with characters like Jiren and even Vegeta, who could have had much more of an impact on the story had they been handled better, and perhaps even the whole tournament could have been made slightly more cohesive looking back at it now. But overall, rewatching this left me with honestly more positive than negatives to talk about, and I'm genuinely happy for that. The music in parts, I believe, was used masterfully well, and in others a little less well. In fact, going through this series again has inspired me to study Dragon Ball's music more, and to be honest, I'm very excited to share with you all what I found and noticed about this series' music. A lot of you have written to me privately and publicly on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, reprimanding me for what I have had to say about the show you love. And to that I say, I love the show too. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing and talking about this show Dragon Ball if I didn't love it. Next week I'm going to be delivering my final analysis of this series from start to finish, talking about what I loved and what I hated in detail and explaining why. I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down memory lane, and I will see you all next week in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.
Champion. Yes, I can work with this.
What are you doing?
Envisioning the best armor you'll ever own, child. Worthy of Hikaru's champion, as she flies on the wings of the 10.
I didn't ask you to make me anything.
But I offered nonetheless. You should be honored.
Little did I know that on that
Any
fateful
soldier
day,
worth
as I
their
began
marks
my
wears
uploading
armor of
my
my
first
making,
Dragon Ball GT
even
review,
in chief
that I
of
will be
Carl.
sealing my fate for
Give
the
me
next
the right
5
resources
months.
and I'll
Reviewing
craft
arc
something
after
that'll
arc
make
of
you
Dragon
the
Ball
envy
GT,
of all
but then
three
having the
clans.
bright idea of reviewing Dragon Ball Super with the ambition of creating an episode where I discuss and break down which one I actually preferred and why. Week after week after week, I uploaded review after review, finally culminating with last week's 17-page long, 45-minute muscle-bound epic chronicling the entire Tournament of Power. All 36 episodes from beginning to end. My hands, my head, and my eyes hurt, but this has been some of the most fun I've had making videos for you guys in a very long time. So before I begin this video, I want to say right from the top, thank you so very much for watching along for the last while. It sincerely means the world to me. This week, however, marks a turning point, as today I will be putting the final pin in the Dragon Ball Super story, the same way I did with Dragon Ball GT all those months ago. In this episode, I will be reviewing and breaking down everything I loved, liked, and hated from Dragon Ball Super. I'll also explain in places how I think it could have been improved, and at the end, I will be explaining what's next. From the Battle of Gods arc all the way through the Goku Black arc into the Universe Survival arc. This is my impression and final review of the series that kickstarted my entire YouTube career. I'm totally not Mark, and this is my final review of Dragon Ball Super. In order to effectively and thoroughly assess my feelings on this arc, I will go through every major character and I will touch on their involvement and output in various arcs they participated in. With each character in section, I'll talk about what I liked first and then what I disliked. So, sound good? Oh, also, I'm not gonna touch on the animation from the first two sagas. It's sort of low-hanging fruit and you guys already know what I think about it, given I've covered it a number of times on this channel already. Anyway, first character, our main man G that dons the orange gi. Let's first discuss Dragon Ball Super's Goku. I really enjoyed the first episode, believe it or not, or at least his involvement with the first episode. Let's not talk about the snake water stuff. But on a more serious note, Goku's fight against Hit had something I wish we saw more of in the series. I find her trying and in a lot of ways succeeding in figuring out how their opponent moved and attacked, strategizing to find a countermeasure. We got to see some stuff like that a little with the Tournament of Power, with Goku in his fight against Jiren. Sort of. I say sort of because Jiren is just sort of strong. So it's just a question of needing to get better and meet that challenge. That said though, Goku's fight with Hit was entertaining and lighthearted enough for me not to take it super seriously, but also provided enough interest for me to sink my teeth into. I also really enjoyed the concept, build-up, and delivery of the form Ultra Instinct. I think the form was distinct enough from Super Saiyan and the various god forms to be its own
My offer
thing.
still
However,
stands.
one
Yeah,
thing
a
that's
soldier
interesting
like
to
you
me,
should
at
only
least
wear
about
the
it, is
best
that in
armor.
the ways that it is
And that's what
distinct
you'll
from
get
the
at
other
Goku's
forms,
Forge.
that particular aspect of it makes it very difficult to age gracefully like any other transformation would. If you look back in the series, transformations like Super Saiyan Blue, Super Saiyan God, and
Forge is
absolutely
ready if you
Super
want some
Saiyan have
armor,
become
champion.
forms that aren't nearly as respected as they were before because they need to make room for new ones. Ultra Instinct, as far as I can understand, is based on perfect combat. So I'm not exactly sure how the company can write around that because eventually there's going to be new forms because there's got to be new toys, so I am interested to see how that progresses. And now what I disliked about Dragon Ball Super's Goku. Stupid Super Goku. I've seen a lot of discourse in the comment sections about me labeling certain instances where Goku acts a certain unappealing way to me as being unfair or unjustified, so let me explain what I mean by Stupid Super Goku. From the beginning of Dragon Ball all the way through to the end of the Buu Saga, Goku has remained capable of being serious when he needs to, but that's not to say he always needs or should even be serious most of the time, because him being serious technically isn't really my issue. In fact, throughout the series, one of Goku's defining character traits has been his innocence and ability to diffuse situations that should be complicated or tense in normal society. With curiosity and enthusiasm, he shows all those involved that certain conventions we all abide by can be ignored for the better. Whether it be his approach to Snake Way, his approach to training and bettering himself in combat, his interactions with Chi-Chi and his proposal at the World Tournament, even meeting his son for the first time. Dragon Ball Super even has aspects that I think nailed this particular aspect of Goku on a number of occasions too. In the Universe 6 tournament, as everyone is bowing to Zen, Zeno, Goku treats him like he would anyone else, because he already treats everyone the way he would like to be treated, with a friendly approach and an enthusiastic energy to engage in the interaction. I like that. I found Goku's relationship with Zeno to be believable, and it worked for me, honestly. So that's not what I'm talking about when I say stupid Super Goku. When I say that, I'm talking specific instances where Goku takes that Goku trait of showing interest and enthusiasm for people and changing it into an obnoxious and irritating energy. For example, when he first meets Zamasu. Contrast this to when Goku first met Beerus in the Battle of Gods movie. In that, he showed an excitement and an enthusiasm for fighting Beerus, but he also didn't act like a fool floating around him making faces. In fact, the whole joke of that scene is based on Goku trying to find a tasteful way of making the request to fight Beerus. It sounds like a subtle difference, but it manifests in a huge tonal shift if you don't do it right. It's the difference between sounding innocent and sounding like a petulant 4-year-old child. But this isn't to say that it happens all the time in Super either. Despite it showing up more times than I can tolerate for the most part, Super has produced some actually interesting instances of dialogue with Goku too. In previous videos, I've celebrated scenes like his interaction with Frieza bringing him back to life, and when he entered the tournament with Frieza too. But when I look back on the series as a whole, I can't help but focus on instances where the writing staff thought it was an okay thing for him to do to forget a key part of the plan of attack in the Goku Black arc twice. Let's talk about Dragon Ball Super's Gohan. I like Gohan from episode 90 onwards, and to be honest, I don't really have many issues with how he's treated from that point up until the end of the tournament. I mean, I think he has a great balance of humility, humanity, and tenacity. He stays active in the tournament for about as long as he should. His character said everything that he needed to say, and served his team well when all was said and done. And I pretty much said everything positive for the character that I wanted to in the previous video. However, even this aspect of his character, this section, it was set up in an incredibly unbelievable and personally a really unsatisfying way. In addition to the vast majority of the series demonstrating nothing new about the character besides his adventure into fatherhood, which we barely get to see, and I don't even think I'm interested in seeing that side of Gohan in the first place. I mean, I get that the Buu Saga Gohan with a lot of fans, and so does the Great Saiyan Man. I just don't get the same appeal, and so you can imagine how vapid and nothing Gohan's character was for me personally watching the first 90 episodes of Dragon Ball Super. Let's talk about Vegeta. In terms of stuff that I liked, his Daddy Vegeta stuff with Bulma and Bulma on Glass was endearing. In addition to that, I enjoyed his beat out of Goku Black for the same reasons I liked him doing so in Fire Out. It's cathartic, but there's nothing really new there. His his trying to distract Beerus in the Battle of Gods arc was good, and his defense of Bulma was sweet too. But a lot of it seemed very safe and predictable for me. And honestly, the most surprising thing I found when rewatching this series was a main character that receives almost as much screen time as Goku. He is basically just an accessory for Goku to develop his fight and to be present to bounce off of when banter needs to be. He is quite literally Goku's sidekick. As I said, someone to create banter with, someone to fuse with, someone to take the hint in situations when it becomes dire. Now, to be clear, this wasn't something that I disliked in the original series, as Vegeta at the time was very much a complete character. Sacrifice Saga. Vegeta, the character, is supposed to be better and more competent person, and usually that manifests in positive changes for the character in the story. But no, nothing changes. After coming on this massive journey, he's just as ineffective in battle as he ever has been. Competent, but not effective in the long term. And because that's a large part of his charm, in fact, I'd almost argue that it's a fundamental part of his charm, doesn't here in the series for Vegeta in any meaningful way. In fact, Dragon Ball Super went out of its way to remove Vegeta's character back a few spaces when the series actually began. Remember at the end of the Buu arc when Vegeta says to Goku that he's the best or something? Well, while Vegeta's serving Beerus in the Battle of Gods arc, he pretty much already got all of that. And why? Because at the end of Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta needs to make the decision that he's not going to chase Goku anymore, even though he technically already made the decision at the end of the Buu Saga. Which brings me to his sacrifice for his big ending. This sacrifice moment in the Tournament of Power, I rolled with every timer I released. I hate it as much as I hate the Piccolo sacrifice in the right direction. It's unsafe. It serves no purpose other than to rest on the hype and ceremony created around a better moment for the original series. Vegeta isn't making any statements of character here. It's as if they saw what made the scene cool back in the day was how it looked and nothing else. Vegeta doesn't get an arc of any description in this show. He doesn't try to overcome anything. We already know he's fighting for his family. We already know he loves them and cares about other people. What made the original scene as impactful as it was the fact that we didn't have a confession that Vegeta actually did care for anyone. This scene therefore only serves to try to recreate that same magic by changing nothing. Oh, but he talks about Kaba too. Who cares? Who actually cares about Kaba? Kaba doesn't even care about Kaba. And that's another thing. One of the elements that Super added that I actually thought we were going to go somewhere with was his relationship with Kaba and the universe mentor figure. But nope, we barely get anything for that. I suppose it's better to watch Goku act like a 4-year-old while Jiren sleeps for a million episodes. And trust me, I'm going to get to him. But first, let's talk about Beerus and Whis quickly. I don't want to spend too much time exploring Beerus and Whis because, well, let's face it, the show didn't die there. But what little we did get to see of them in the brief moments they did extend into the story in meaningful ways, I did enjoy quite a bit. Those instances they do so really worked and made Super feel like its own thing and not something only concerned with returning and calling back to classic moments from Z. Whis' training of Goku and Vegeta at various points in the series were fantastic and provided some of my favorite training moments in the entire series. I also adore Whis' character. I find him to be a strangely perfect foil for both Goku and Vegeta, which is honestly a tough balance to try and strike. He's orderly enough to contrast Goku and flamboyant enough to bounce off Vegeta well. He's my favorite new character introduced into Super by a long, long way. Beerus, unfortunately, does even less, however, pretty much returning to the same story beats and gags time and again, always looking to be uninvolved with whatever Goku and Vegeta are doing that particular week. He's angry with Goku, he's angry with Vegeta, he's angry with Goku and Vegeta. Sleeping, hungry. Heck, remove that eating stuff right there and Beerus gets almost as much screen time as Yamcha. The character has virtually nothing to do in the story, and what drew my attention to this was actually his Hakai of Zamasu. It wasn't a particularly intense moment driven by story, but it was still hugely entertaining. And I think it's largely because we know he's an imposing, important character, but we never actually get to see him do anything. Let's talk about Hit. Hit was somewhat interesting in the Universe 6 tournament, but they really ended up doing nothing with the character. The most noteworthy thing he did after episode 39 was lose to Monaka and then lose to Jiren later on. He didn't even participate in the baseball episode. When that first aired, I had thought that it was largely due to them wanting to protect the character's mystique for the Tournament of Power, but he does nothing in that either. So now I ask, why does Hit even exist? Let's talk about Zamasu and Goku Black.
And I'm black, y'all! And I'm black, y'all!
DeviantArt fanfiction coming to life aside, this Goku Black was a really fun character, full of personality. And I get that Zamasu isn't the exact same character as Goku Black, but they are both Zamasu. So, in my mind, one of two things should have happened in this arc. Either both characters should have behaved and acted the exact same way, or the differences that existed between the characters should have led to conflict later in the arc between them. But neither happens, and I can't be the only one that thinks this. Goku Black is an entirely different character to Zamasu, who happens to be immortal. A lot of people might explain this away by drawing attention to how Goku's body might have changed his outlook, and yeah, okay, but then why not do something with how his character has changed in that body? He was already powerful enough in episode 64 to a frankly absurd degree. Maybe in that arc he could have been rubbed the wrong way by Zamasu a few too many times. Maybe he was waiting for the right moment to dispose of Zamasu. And when the Mothra was used against him, perhaps Black had the chance to save Zamasu, but instead he goes full Scar and says, "Long live the king," before allowing Zamasu to fall into the metaphorical Mothra gorge of rampaging wildebeest. And despite that metaphor actually getting away from me, it still makes a lot more sense than the entire arc anticipates it. And even in scenes he's not in, I swear, towards the ending of the Tournament of Power, I was waiting for him to show up and do something crazy. In a positive way, I mean. And that's another sign of a character that adds to a show. On top of that, again, Frieza's story in the Universe Survival arc begins as someone who would hop onto any other team that at the first sign of a better deal, eventually coming to terms with his trust issues at the end of the arc. It's compelling stuff, producing for me, throughout his time in the tournament, great moment after moment. Easily the star of the show for me. But we're finally here, let's talk about Dragon Ball Super's Jiren. For the first 90% of the Universe Survival arc, Jiren's arc is a beautiful story of how a fence post became a character. I wrote a video talking about Jiren in depth that I think you should watch if you haven't or are interested, but But in short, it doesn't work for the story this arc is trying to tell, I think, personally. But I have more to add to that, along with, I think, an explanation. But before I get to that, people have been commenting on my last video addressing my "people are flying" comments by saying, well, actually, if you really account for all the variables that the so-called flying you're referring to in the Tournament of Power could be accounted for with a series of complex physics-based explanations.
That wasn't flying. That was falling with style.
Oh yeah? Well, what about this? Explain that. But even the flying aside, that honestly isn't even...
This'll take my fall.
You'll want to talk to me, champion. I assure you. Ah, perfect fit. May you find victory in that honor. Or at least save yourself from a wound or two.
Your enemy is mine.
You should have missed this chance to trade. Maybe I was wrong.
Wind's blustering about something.
changing nothing. Oh, but he talks about Kaba too. Who cares? Who actually cares about Kaba? Kaba doesn't even care about Kaba. And that's another thing. One of the elements that Super added that I actually thought we were going to go somewhere with was his relationship with Kaba and the Universe 6 Saiyans as a mentor figure. But nope, we barely get anything for that. I suppose it's better to watch Goku act like a 4-year-old while Jiren sleeps for a million episodes. And trust me, I'm going to get to him. But first, let's talk about Beerus and Whis quickly. I don't want to spend too much time exploring Beerus and Whis because, well, let's face it, the show didn't die there. But what little we did get to see of them in the brief moments they did extend into the story in meaningful ways, I did enjoy quite a bit. Those instances they do so really worked and made Super feel like its own thing, not something only concerned with returning and calling back to classic some of my favorite training moments in the entire series. I also adore Rita's character. It likes to be a strangely perfect foil for both Goku and Vegeta, which is honestly a tough balance to strike. He's orderly enough to contrast Goku and annoying enough to bounce off Vegeta well. He's my favorite new character introduced into Super by being a wrong way. Jiren, unfortunately, does even less color. He must return to the same story he gags time again. Always looking to be uninvolved with whatever Goku and Vegeta are that particular day. Right there, and Beerus gets almost as much screen time as Yamcha. The character has virtually nothing to do in the story, and one paying attention to this was actually his Hakai of Zamasu. It wasn't particularly important to my story, but it was still hugely entertaining. And I think it's largely because we know the character never actually gets into it. It was somewhat interesting that the Universe 6 character. The most noteworthy thing he did after episode 39 was Alpha and then Jiren later on. When that first aired, I thought that it was largely due to them wanting to protect the character's mystique for the Tournament of Power, but he did something in that either. So I ask, why does it even exist? Let's talk about Zamasu and Goku. DeviantArt fanfiction coming to light aside, fun character, full of personality, and I get that Zamasu isn't the exact same character as the Black Bucks. They are both Zamasu. This happens in the either both characters should have behaved and acted the exact same way, or the difference is very simple. The characters should have read the character. Either happens, and I can't be the only one that thinks this. Goku Black is an entirely different character to Zamasu, who happens to be immortal. A lot of people might explain this away by drawing attention to how Goku's body might have changed his outlook, and yeah, okay, but then why not do something with how his character has changed in that body? He was already powerful enough in episode 64 to a frankly absurd degree. Maybe in that arc he could have been rubbed the wrong way by Zamasu a few too many times. Maybe he was waiting for the right moment to dispose of Zamasu, and when the Mako was using it, perhaps God had a chance to save Zamasu wasn't that he was full scarred. Allowing Zamasu to fall into the metaphor of the rampaging wildebeest. And despite that metaphor actually getting away from me, it still makes a lot more sense than the entire arc of that. And speaking of that, I thought it was really weird choice to have this super complicated plot about what is ultimately a really simple story. Fox's timeline is in trouble, they need to get the bad guys out. And despite that simple story, in order to make even the most humble of attempts to make sense of all of this, you need a tall glass of coffee, a wide open schedule, and a cold pour with a million intersecting strings. And guess what? It doesn't make sense even if you do that. Let's talk about without reservation, the best character in Dragon Ball Super, don't ask. And it's not even a contest. Granted, he's not in it a lot, and maybe that's part of the appeal for me, but from the moment Goku recruits him up until the very end, and even beyond that into the Broly movie, Frieza enhances each and every scene he participates in. Even in scenes he's not in, I swear, towards the end of the Tournament of Power, I was waiting for him to show up and do something crazy. In a positive way, I mean. And that's another sign of a character that adds to a show. On top of that, again, Frieza's story in the Universe Survival arc begins as someone who would hop onto any other team that at the first sign of a better deal, eventually coming to terms with his trust issues at the end of the arc. It's compelling stuff, producing for me, throughout his time in the tournament, great moment after moment. Easily the star of the show for me. But we're finally here, let's talk about Dragon Ball Super's Jiren. For the first 90% of the Universe Survival arc, Jiren's arc is a a beautiful story of how a fence post became a character. I wrote a video talking about Jiren in depth that I think you should watch if you haven't or are interested, but in short, it doesn't work for the story this arc is trying to tell, I think personally. But I have more to add to that, along with, I think, an explanation. But before I get to that, people have been commenting on my last video addressing my "people are flying" comments by saying, well, actually, if you really account for all the variables that the so-called flying you're referring to in the Tournament of Power could be accounted for with a series of complex physics-based explanations.
That wasn't flying. That was falling with style.
Oh yeah? Well, what about this? Explain that. But even the flying aside, that honestly isn't even the first or even the last issue I had with Jiren as a character. He just does stuff and then doesn't for ages. The Universe Survival Arc, if you really boil it down, is just a collection of really cool moments, but there isn't a story like the other tournaments in Dragon Ball have had. As I've said, I've enjoyed isolated moments from this series, pockets of brilliance, and as you saw in the last video, I addressed everything I really enjoyed, which happened to climax well with the final 3 episodes of the series. But despite those episodes working in isolation, in a vacuum, the real problems the arc itself faces become much more evident the farther back you stand from the problem. Because as a story, the arc itself is flawed on a fundamental level and suffers from severe bloating at times in unnatural ways. I sincerely believe now, after going back over the series, that the driving force behind the story and pacing issues plaguing the series is most certainly not the lack of effort or imagination at the studio, but in fact a lack of a solid foundation or source from which to establish or create a story upon. While Akira Toriyama is very much in charge of dictating the story of the series, what he gives to the studios and Toyo Taro in terms of material to work with is completely unknown. It's obvious to me at least that both Toei and Toyo Taro with his manga embellish and deviate from the notes of Akira Toriyama when the opportunity presents itself. This is most obvious given that both make very different choices with the story, yet intersect at a number of key points before ending in the same place. Keeping that in mind, I think it's somewhat telling when looking back at the anime's final arc episode list. Notice anything different between this and all of the other arcs? Anybody? How about the fact that it's over twice as long as the second longest and 4 times longer than the others? And if you notice, all the arcs of Super that appear in the manga also are longer and more bloated than the manga's version, which doesn't have to deal with a specific pressure the anime does. And this pressure, I think, is the main driving force behind why the anime feels so bloated and boring in certain parts. And that pressure is time slots. Dragon Ball Super ended its 3-year stint on Fuji TV on March 25th, 2018. However, the Universe Survival Arc, penned to be the climax of the series, was announced in 2016 and ran for over 13 months. This is simply an observation of mine, but while the final arc of Super has the most story to tell, I still believe the writers and producers of the show were faced with a crisis of story. A problem of trying to fit a square block into a circular hole. They had a story provided by Akira Toriyama, but in its current state would not bring them to the finish line of March 25th. And so, then we were greeted with 7-episode-long stints where Jiren, the goal of the tournament, sleeps and stands on the sidelines doing nothing. This would explain why so much emphasis was put onto characters in the tournament that ultimately went nowhere, and this also explains why the tournament felt less like a story and more like a filler-tastic Monster of the Week type series, with every universe in the tournament falling to Universe 7's efforts, and no other universe ever leading to a subsequent universe's demise. Not even the great Jiren was able to eliminate a single universe. Heck, even the manga at least doesn't share that problem, and I have a host of reasons not to enjoy that telling too. But in saying this, however, assuming my theory is correct, I think what Toei did to fill the time was somewhat well done. While the story from start to finish doesn't flow well, the series of mini moments worked well individually. However, in saying that, the level of disorganized storytelling ruined Jiren for me, created the unlikely circumstances that wrecking everyone, which is akin to a single wrestler knocking out everyone in a battle royal. And if you're going to portray the Universe 7 team as the underdogs, maybe don't frame them like that while also having them wreck every other universe. But that brings me to the future, my plans moving forward. As it stands, these last few months have really taken it out of me, and so I plan on tackling singular videos for a little while before moving on to my next big review series. And don't worry, there will be another one. I've seen your comments, and I will be returning with another series soon. Thank you so much for the support once again. My name is Totally Not Mark. I'll see you guys next week, and thank you so much for watching. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. About 16 months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my career. Bigger than that dreaded animated moments video and bigger than my Pokemon video. Those two were either naivety or lacking in clarity, but this one, I should have known better. You see, 16 months ago, I released a breakdown of the Moro character and the arc as a whole, before it's finished. On top of being largely negative, I also got so much stuff wrong. So, once I realized all of this, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't talk about the Moro arc until it's finished up completely. And when I was waiting here in silence, you guys sent me thousands, and I mean thousands, of messages asking me to make a video on it, to rectify my mistakes, and to own up to them. And so, with this video, I'm not going to do just that. Today, I'm going to write to you all about why this is, for me, at this moment in time, the best Dragon Ball Super arc in the entire series. Today, I'm reviewing the very first manga original story entitled Moro Arc. This year has been a roller coaster when it comes to content with me exploring a brand new story in One Piece, and as a result, it's been literally 7 months since I released and made anything Dragon Ball related. So, I thought what better way to end the year than by returning to my roots in reviewing the latest from the world of Dragon Ball, and this one's rather special. The arc itself started in November of 2018, and to be perfectly honest, I was sort of apprehensive to say the least. Toyotaro's Tournament of Power didn't exactly set my world on fire, and with this new arc, to have the slate wiped completely clean once again with another story out of nowhere, next to the fire, I was really starting to feel tired of the product overall. And plus, with the feeling surrounding myself with the long chapters that have been on into 2019 and over to 2020, until I arrived today with this video for you to say that this story is honestly way better than I thought it was, and easily way better. More in fact, it's a pretty simple story. Goku and Vegeta get recruited by the Galactic Patrol by Dr. Bad Guy, to introduce the Galactic Patrol, where all the worst people in the universe are kept, except for 3 of them. It's here we also introduced to Moro, and after escaping from prison, he defeats Goku and Vegeta on that series of old human training, while he becomes a more powerful, younger fighter, culminating in a massive battle on Earth, and I swear it will make sense later, until finally Goku and Vegeta, alongside the Divine Captain, finally happens to overpower and defeat Moro for good. It's a simple story, and honestly has been surprisingly good execution when you go back over it and read it all. So, throughout this, plenty of interesting choices that honestly many of the transgressions of the prior story arcs that more than anything else made this a joy to read through in comparison. It's fun by Toyotaro has been in serialization since 2015, releasing 1 chapter every month since. However, starting with Battle of Gods, Universe 6, Out of Black, and even Tournament of Power, Akira Toriyama has written the story for the series. And the successor, for lack of a better term, has assumed the responsibility of the life in the illustration department. And his name is Toyotaro, certified in a number of different videos, but to be brief, going into this review back 2 years ago, I was extremely nervous for what was to come. Not just because I had tremendous issues with Toyotaro's illustrations in the past, but also because production of this art would be unlike anything you see in the first story from Toyotaro. And while the story has some minor issues here and there, the best story in Dragon Ball Super. So, without delaying it any further, let's start at the very beginning and break down what I thought of it. The introduction. The intro to this arc isn't particularly flashy, but one aspect I did think it nailed is its build-up to the character of Moro. Starting with a cold open to recruit the likes of Vegeta and Goku by the new addition to the cast of this arc in Meris, we as viewers get to see flashbacks to 10 million years ago with the likes of the Lord of Lords battling with Moro, along with introducing us to the expanded world of the Galactic Patrol. In terms of world building, I loved this aspect of these introductory chapters as they further expand the scope of Universe itself. The new dynamics and explorations through the ranks and day-to-day tasks of the Galactic Patrol made for scenes I was quite excited to see more of. Specifically those concerning Jocko, because while reading One Piece over the last year, I also took the time to blitz through Jocko's manga, and if you haven't seen it, it's honestly a delight. It's one of the more recent works from Akira Toriyama from a paneling and illustration point of view too, and thanks to that short story, I was able to really enjoy Jocko a lot more as a character in this tale when I revisited it for this video specifically. And speaking of characters, a criticism I had right up until the death of Maris in the manga was that I really didn't feel connected to him as a character. However, now having gone back over everything, I can happily say that I was wrong. Not only does he get characterized with this interesting air of mystery surrounding his person early on, but he is all over this story. From the very first chapter, he is the inciting incident that sparks the activities and introduces the heroes to the rest of the main story's world. But more on Miras a little later. Needless to say, it's time to dive into some of the major conflicts of the arc as we follow Moro, having escaped from prison with his eyes set on Namek. The Namek section. One of my larger criticisms of this series has been their implementation of the other characters like Piccolo, or perhaps more obviously, Vegeta. It feels, to me at least, that after having gone through all of Super, Toei, Akira Toriyama, and Toyotaro never really knew what to do with Vegeta's character itself, forcing him to relive these same tired routines we've seen plenty of in the original series. In one respect, I can understand why. From the very moment Vegeta was introduced up until the very end of the series in Dragon Ball Z, he was designed to fulfill a very specific purpose, to undergo a change arc, to cause conflict and tension within the story as a result of that growth, and to be honest, he was incredibly effective in that role. Ask someone who their favorite characters are from Dragon Ball Z, and I'd wager a sizable chunk of folks will choose Vegeta very, very early on. And it's easy to see why. But now that his character's initial purpose, for lack of a better term, has been satisfied, what now? Well, the obvious answer would be to give him a new goal, but that's easier said than done. You can't just give him anything to do. It needs to be rooted in his character, or more specifically, his history. Otherwise, it runs the risk of feeling extremely artificial, and that's the last thing you want with a character that feels so real. So at the very least, I can empathize with the struggles of the writing staff at Toei and Akira Toriyama at large. They've clearly been dealing with a lot. However, thankfully, this arc changed all of that, and not only gave Vegeta a brand new experience for us to see him deal with, but it was also rooted in his character's history. We've been there for all of Vegeta's transgressions after the events of the Saiyan Saga. We know everything he got up to during that time period on Namek and thereafter. And so with now revisiting Namek for the very first time since becoming a more complete character, we not only see Vegeta feel shame for having committed the things he's done, not only act in a positive way to enact change, but to also, without flinching, accept and own up to his past, acknowledge that it's something he needs to atone for, leading to some of the most incredible emotions in all of Dragon Ball Super I've seen, culminating in him diving in before to save a small nephew boy. We've seen the character of Vegeta accept love into his life before, to accept friendship, and to fight for those equal. It doesn't need to be brought to the forefront like a big character anymore. He's grown past it. This scene with Vegeta interacting with the surviving
Persevere. still in this fight. Seems quieter when it snows. Keep these on me.
Be vigilant. With Regala's defeat, the clan...
Outlander. killed by this Outlander.